I want to ask each of the five what their feelings are, their views about how the North East Leadership Board is working and how it should work with the LEP and other partners to drive forward economic growth. And I'm going to start with Dave Law from Newcastle International Airport.
Thanks very much. I think I'm in a somewhat favoured position because my time at the airport has been spent working with the local authorities for the past 10 to 11 years. So in terms of the work of the LEP, we've actually had that because we've had a 51% shareholding by the 7 local authorities and 49% by the private sector. So we're very fortunate, and I can say with confidence, that the 7 local authorities, particularly in the last 3 to 4 years, have come together tremendously well in support of the airport. And where you've had the strength is them being able to put to one side what their personal views might be, but to deliver for the airport in a combined way. And I've actually been encouraged to see how they actually work with the private sector, and particularly in the last 6 months, I think most of you are aware, we've got a new strategic partner in AMP from Australia. And to see the leaders that sit on the airport working with the private sector has been phenomenal. And that's why I honestly think that the vehicle that we've been created has the ability to be very, very successful.
Thank you. Roy?
I'm going to speak quite a lot more later about innovation in general, but let me just say right now that the combined authority is in fact an unbelievable source of as an innovation engine. There's no question that around the North East there are companies, big and small, who can provide innovative solutions within our public services. And I think that the combined authority can work hard to establish that kind of connectivity with what I say is the what's possible to meet their what's needed. That's one thing. Secondly, there's no question that we've got to act as one. We've got to be cohesive. It's absolutely no good if we're going to be talking to the Vice President of Innovation in a major multinational, whether they're in the UK or not, if we don't act as if we are a cohesive unit. And the combined authority, I think, can help greatly in ensuring that we do act as a cohesive unit. I should, by the way, say that this cohesive unit will not just be this combined authority, it's got to be the North East. I mean, I don't think there's any sort of barrier that somehow separates out bits of the North East. I come from the North East. I work in the North East. I work for the North East. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. Beth?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you for the opportunity for the TUC to be part of this morning's panel debate. And it's fantastic to see that the local authorities are working collectively in terms of developing the region's aspirations. Just in terms of views of the board, I mean, the North East LEP board is very much representative of local authorities and business. I've only been in the job 8 weeks. I've had various conversations with people, and some people are of the view that it's business that's going to produce economic growth for the region and inward investment. Some people I've spoke to said it's the consumer that's going to bring us out of the state that we're in. But actually, at the heart of all of this is the workforce, and it's the workforce that's going to drive high-performing workplaces. And I think it would be wrong of me to sort of be sitting on this panel today without saying that we feel that workers should be represented as part of the combined authority, and they have a voice in terms of shaping the plans where the skills are, and unions have a real role to play and are a vehicle in terms of support, and especially around the skills side in the workplace. We've got a lot of experience in that role. So it is about working collectively, cohesively, and being representative of the whole of the North East, of which the workforce plays a really big part of that.
Thank you. And Lucy?
Good morning. I also support the combined authority. I think there's a real need for clarity about who will do what. What will a LEP do? What will a combined authority do? how each is properly resourced to do the functions, and real understanding among us in the North East exactly who is doing what. And I think the inward investment piece is a very good example of that, where we've just been close to people going off and doing different things, and that cohesiveness to me is the really, really important thing. Dave, you've surprised me. President of the Chamber of Commerce, I thought you were going to say something about the voice of private sector and how that can be listened to by the combined authority. So as your loyal Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce,
I've got
I'll just feed
question
that in.
too to come back.
Well, I'm always ahead of you, Dave. That's the thing. What was really valuable about the LEP board was the obviously the very strong involvement from the private sector, but we, the universities, found it so important and so valuable that we had a voice there as well. So obviously we are very keen to play our part there. The shadow board is really important because, looking at you, Mick, that will be the thing that keeps things moving. We must not lose momentum on the work that we're now gathering steam with, that the LEP's driven. And in this establishment of the legal structures that will be needed to establish combined authority, really important that we don't lose any ground and momentum.
Thank you. The thing about One Voice reminds me of, I think it may have been an apocryphal story, that the East and West Midlands RDAs both had representative offices in Chongqing in central China. And it conjured up this wonderful vision of a Chinese entrepreneur standing there saying, East, West, which is it to be? The importance of speaking with one voice. Dave, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll come back on the question that Lucy's put us on the spot on. Taking my airport hat off and put me president of the NECC hat on, which I've only just had for 3 months. Again, I think the support the NECC want to give the combined authority is there. I believe, right, I understand, I believe that there is the opportunity potentially of a scrutiny panel to be set up where voices or senior figures from CBI, NECC have the opportunity to see how the LEP and the combined authority are working. So, you know, if I believe that's correct and it happens, I think, again, that shows that the local authorities and the LEP are demonstrating the openness to this whole approach. So I very, very much welcome that. My term as president, my opening speech centred around about working together in partnership. And I spoke collectively about having a combined voice, etc., etc. And coming forward and moving on from it, I think the great opportunity that we've got here is to pick up the report. And I know Andrew said it's not his report, it's the regions. But, you know, what we have got is a senior figure such as Andrew has, in my opinion, given with credibility down in central government. And I think that's where we have to pick that up and really, as a region, come together and embrace everything that's being discussed. And there's some great work already being done, which I'm sure we're going to allude to later on. But from the Chamber's perspective, and I call on the CBI and others, that we must work together. And there's also been some great work done on the transport already. The joint paper between the NECC and the CBI has already started that process. So I think it's a great opportunity just to kick on from the position that we're currently in. And if Lucy's got any more questions for us, maybe she can tell us in advance.
Andy, I didn't ask you on that first one, and we've slipped into the second question already, but you could probably answer both of them in one go.
Well, everybody else has answered, gave my answer, but in actual fact, I think it's quite reassuring to hear that the general consensus was to have a combined authority. And I don't know how much kicking and screaming there was, but we got there in the end, and we've got the combined authority. And I think it's already been answered, but just to reiterate, I think the combined authority and the skills within that group, that team, will be representative of different sectors, and I think there's less danger of going down one route. I think there'll be a broader representation of the different business sectors, including the private sector, so we don't go down a route where everything is weighted towards manufacturing, albeit it's king and important, but there are other key sectors, major employers that need to be represented as well.
Lucy mentioned clarity being needed on roles and resources. I wonder if anybody would like to say just a little bit more than that before we go on to the next question, because that does seem to me a really key issue. Who is responsible in the long run, and where are the resources going to come from, given that the combined authority is sort of conducting a group of 7. Anybody any thoughts on that? No? Well, we'll just flag that one.
I think really, John, that's where we need the leadership from the LEP and from the combined authority. You know, we want to feed into that debate, but you are the guys with the pot of money to manage this. We need that leadership from you. Sorry,
Okay.
I'll bounce it back.
No, that's a good answer. Okay, well, Roy trailed the fact that he had something to say on innovation, and this was a very important part of the Adonis report. So and I have to say personally, it's one of the bits I found hardest to quite understand what was meant. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Roy in a way what he's actually working on the open innovation recommendations and how they can be taken forward. Roy.
Okay. No pressure then. Also, I should say I'm retired, by the way. At least I thought I was retired until I was asked by Paul to engage in the concept of, and Will Hutton, the concept of open innovation as a strategic direction for the region. I should say first that in this room there are a lot of people that I've tried to engage with over the past 2 or 3 months since I was invited to get involved. And I thank everybody who's spent time with me. And there are plenty of people that I haven't yet spent time with that I would like to in the context of innovation. The principles are often quite simple. The practice and indeed the institutional conditions within which innovation happens are often quite complex. So what I'm going to do now is just tell you a little bit about what I'm doing. All right?
Yep, please do.
First of all, let me just give you a definition. My definition of innovation is matching what's possible with what's needed. There is something implicit in that, and the first thing is that you've got to understand what's needed. Innovation is not invention. It's not the fuzzy front end, the sort of spaghetti of research. Innovation is the execution of great creative research into the marketplace for wealth creation, jobs creation, high-skilled jobs creation, and a sort of regional, in our case, it's going to be regional prosperity. We will not have regional prosperity without innovation being at its heart. We may well get quite a bit of inward investment with respect to manufacturing, but it will be innovation in our small companies to make them bigger, in our medium-sized companies to make them bigger, or inward investment to do innovation for problem solving for big organizations. That will be the source of long-term prosperity for us. You can see that, by the way, if you go around the world, and you know, in my previous life, I spent quite a bit of time going around the world looking at where innovation hubs were successful, and the prosperity comes from that innovation concept. Now, what in the end does that really mean? Well, first of all, you've got to understand what you're good at. And there is absolutely no doubt, and I've talked to many SMEs, many medium-sized companies in the Northeast, that we are very good at innovative work in plenty of different sectors. In fact, not just the ones which are outlined in the Adonis review. I've gone beyond that into some sectors which are not mentioned, including, by the way, the consumer sector, for example, and seen fantastic innovative work going on. There is a brand agency in this region that has direct access to board level people in at least 5 major multinationals in the United States. And they're a tiny company. And they're being very innovative directly with some very big players. No one really knows. Now, let me say that there are 2 areas that I'll speak to now. The first one is having established what our core competencies are and what we're really good at, then we need to make sure that we put those core competencies to work in well-structured and cohesive innovation hubs. We already have in this region a national innovation hub in CPI, which is, quite frankly, an open innovation best practice. We've got another one, which is NAREC. We've got a whole series of engagements, which are innovation hubs. There's one between Durham University and Procter & Gamble. And there are plenty of others that we could have that will act as beacons for engagement with people who've got innovation problems to solve. So innovation hubs is a concept which I am working on right now. In addition to that, there's the question of matching what's needed with what's possible. If I'm sitting as a vice president of innovation in a major multinational in the United States, I don't want to engage with problem solving in a sort of serendipitous, piecemeal way. I want to engage in a strategic way. That's, by the way, why we need to act as a cohesive region. So what I'm also putting together beyond this innovation hub concept, which was outlined by Will Hutton in the report, is also a concept of external engagement in innovation, with the right people, using the right language, talking to the right people about problems that the North East can solve. Whether it's an SME solving a problem for a major multinational, or it's an SME working with another SME somewhere else to build their business bigger, we have to get an engagement process which is coordinated, structured, and in the end, quite honestly, systematized. The best regions in the world for innovation are the ones that have a systemic innovation process. Now, I think what I've probably done is just, what's the best way to say it? Giving you food for thought on that. But it is actually a challenge as well, because it's a complex area, and I will need to make it as simple and straightforward as possible. But it's not rocket science. I need your support. Thanks.
Thank you, Roy. Any other panel members want to comment on that at all? Lucy.
Thank you. I'll be honest, when I first, a few years ago, started hearing the term open innovation, I must say I struggled a bit to understand quite what it meant. I commend the supplement that's in your pack, the time supplement yesterday, because Roy gives a very clear explanation about what it is. I'm in the Roy camp thinking that invention and innovation are quite different things, although they can happen in the same place. And invention and innovation isn't about clever people in white coats producing gadgets. That said, at Northumbria, we're very proud of the iPad and iPhone developed by our alumni, Jonathan Ives, but more proud of the whole design of process and services. And I think that's the point that you're getting to, Rob. Getting to, Roy. It's about doing things differently and helping the industries in the North East around service and process, doing things differently, better, more efficiently, and so on. So I really welcome the drive in Andrew's report around innovation. The universities have a key part to play in this, and again in the supplement there are some really good examples, if you read it in detail, what the universities are doing in the field of innovation, each one playing to their particular strengths, supporting the sectors where they have particular allegiances and so on. Innovation is not just about multinationals and the universities working with them, although we'll be doing a lot of that at our Open Innovation Centre at the Northern Design Centre in Gateshead. It's about innovating with small businesses, micro businesses as well. So innovation is to all of those. But to me, it's one of the key roles when the universities step up to the plate.
Okay, I think I'm a bit clear. Thank you for that. I'm going to borrow quickly to today. Why do we need a transatlantic flight? It's been very encouraging this morning to see some of the people already mentioned. But I'll talk about the transatlantic flight in a minute. But I think the first message I put in here is that in pursuing the transatlantic flight, we are well aware that we still need additional connectivity, particularly in Europe. Okay, so please be assured that we're not putting all our eggs into one basket. Particularly, think of ways to get Brussels back. I think that was the wrong decision by the airline. We're very, very close, hopefully, to bringing Brussels back. And I think that particularly with Germany, and what I would say is hopefully watch that space. But
turning to transatlantic, The airport, is seen as an important partner for businesses in the Northeast because connectivity to you people is absolutely vital. There's no doubt about that. And the transatlantic service will undoubtedly work. And why am I so sure? Well, let's just have a look at how it could be a game changer. And I'll use the Emirates service to demonstrate that. Just over 5 years ago, we secured a daily flight to Dubai. That aircraft started with about 280 seats on board every day, 7 days a week, flying to Dubai and beyond. Last year in September, the aircraft was upgraded from Emirates to a 428-seater aircraft flying out of the region every day. And behind that are some really impressive numbers. Later this year, we'll celebrate the 1 millionth passenger carried by Emirates in that short space of time. But what it's really done is open up this region to the global economy. And if you look at some of the numbers, and if you bear with us, I'll just give you a couple. This year, we will expect exports through the airport to top 250 million. 5 years ago, before Emirates, we were around about 20 to 30 million pounds per annum, right? Massive change. The next figure I'll give you, they're not our figures, these are from UKTI. Trade between the Northeast and Australasia before the Emirates service was about 150 million pounds a year. This year, it'll be over 360 million pounds. But it's not just about those impressive figures, it's about how it's opened the door to other businesses. And one great example is Heart Doors, of how they have now set up in the UAE and are taking that opportunity so much further forward. So connectivity and creating that connectivity, direct connectivity, has proved to be fantastic news for this region. And there is no doubt in our analysis that a transatlantic service will work. Now, how do you go about getting a transatlantic service? It's the key question. It's not easy. We've been close before. Some of you in the room will know, that at one stage American Airlines agreed to do it and the route was on sale, right? But unfortunately, American Airlines had their own issues and the route was withdrawn. So since then, we've concentrated to try and find a way of encouraging that. And I think we're pretty close. I'm delighted at the support that we're currently getting from the NELEP. I'm delighted that Lord Adonis has mentioned it in his review. And I think, as long as things stay as they are, right, we've got a fair chance. I am concerned about Syria because if the oil price goes up significantly, that can have an impact on our ability to track that airline because the cost of running that service is phenomenal. So it's about finding a way. We've also approached government to talk about APD, to try and get an APD holiday to help us get the route started. And it's all about getting the route started because that route will not make money in the first 3 to 4 years. So it's about trying to find a way that will encourage the airline to go on the route. But hopefully we can achieve that goal.
I covered all the regions in my last job at the Financial Times, and it's quite an issue in all the regions, isn't it? I mean, very interesting, for example, Manchester Airport for a long time has seen itself as the North's airport. But it's actually lost a lot of its international connections, and Liverpool, John Lennon, above us only sky. As the taxi drivers in Liverpool say, imagine no possessions. But there's Leeds, Bradford, there's Midlands airports. They're all chasing after the same.
I think, John, you make a good point, and again, I don't want people to think it's all about Emirates. But if you look at the Emirates example, why did they choose Newcastle? Quite simply, if you look at where Emirates operate from, they have a policy of people being able to try and get to an Emirates service within a 2-hour drive. So if you look at from Gatwick up to Heathrow, across to Birmingham, to Manchester, and then they were operating at Glasgow, Newcastle was a logical position for them to base. So they've got that now UK coverage. And obviously we're using the same tactic in terms of negotiations with a transatlantic operator. The missing link, undoubtedly, is Newcastle, because there's a gap, again, from Manchester up to Glasgow or Edinburgh.
Thank you. Let's deal with another transport issue as well, the rail issue. The Commission's report states that rail should be the natural choice for business travel. How can this idea be best promoted in the NELEP area? And what about leisure and local commuter travel? I'll start with Andy on this one.
Well, travel is absolutely key to the shopper, and as you can imagine, with increased internet sales year in and year out, we need to make access as simple as possible for everyone, and that is access from town to city and from community to community, whether it's using the metro, whether it's using the bus, rail, or whatever it may be. One of the things that puts me off as a consumer and a user is overcrowding. If anybody's got the train from Birmingham, you know you can stand quite away, even post Leeds, you'll stand quite away. And then a Friday evening that's a journey from hell, and we just don't want it. Now, I don't understand the industry well enough to know what it needs to put another carriage on, because that's clearly the answer. So I think real scrutiny into that area, that how we can improve the services, and whatever the committee or group is, these are the people that need to push this forward to improve the transport infrastructure that we have.
Dave, you any thoughts about this?
Probably won't surprise you to say that actually I didn't agree with that part of the report. And to be fair, I did raise it as soon as the report was written. And it's not because I'm not against rail. My thing is, we are a remote region. Okay, we have to recognise we are remote, and I believe we need both rail and air. Right, there's no doubt about that. And if you look at the market from the northeast to London, if we didn't have air services, what would happen to the competition? What would happen to the rail prices? What would happen to the fares? So, you know, I'm a fundamental believer that we need that competition. You know, as a region, we are very fortunate. We have 6 flights a day with British Airways into Heathrow. And I think what we have as a region is we've got to get behind the third runway argument at Heathrow and protect our slots into Heathrow without a shadow of a doubt. We live on an island, right, and we cannot afford to lose that connectivity through Heathrow, right? If we lose that hub, then it would be a serious setback for this region, unless we can produce these other direct connectivity flights. We need Heathrow. There's no doubt about that. And whether it's a third runway or some other solution, the northeast definitely needs both air and rail in the domestic market.
So, would you be saying that if BA suddenly canned the flight and nobody else stepped up to it, you think that rail fares would rise?
If BA can Newcastle Heathrow, there'll be nobody to go into Heathrow. You simply won't get the slots. Heathrow is congested now. The key for our region is to hold on to what we've got. You know, with the greatest respect to our colleagues on Teesside, we've seen what's happened to their airport since they lost their flights into Heathrow. They're gone. You'll not get them replaced. Heathrow has a choice. It's its capacity. Unless Heathrow grows, and we all talk about it, about competing in a global market. How do we get off the island? Do we allow Frankfurt, Amsterdam to become the UK's major hub, or do we want our own? And that is a serious question that hopefully the Davis Commission is going to answer, is how we take this forward. Because air connectivity through Heathrow or wherever in the southeast is a critical decision that either this current government or the next government's got to make. And they're going to have to commit it, because right now we are losing ground.
Okay, well, let's move on to the skills agenda. Oh, yes, please do.
In that context, by the way, innovation is about dialogue, and dialogue will only happen if we've got really good access to the rest of the world and the rest of the UK. Whether that's air or train or bus or whatever you like, it's absolutely critical. You know, in business, there's always something that can be the hurdle to success. It would be a great pity if we had such fantastic businesses that were capable of providing innovative solutions for all sorts of different external organisations, whether they're inside the UK or not. But people simply couldn't dialogue easy because they couldn't get here. I mean, that can be a serious restrictor, or indeed an enabler. So I just want to make the point that this transport question is implicit in all sorts of things, including whether or not we have an effective innovation strategy. Sorry, John.
No, it's fine. Andy, did you want to come back, by the way? It occurred to me you might want to reply to some of the things that David said.
Yeah, and again, I always try and zoom in to try and defend retail, the retail sector, whilst we're talking about these major global projects and things that we'll talk about for 10 years. And for me, it's about in the doing, it's about doing things now. And interesting point Dave makes about, so what could the rail do if we lost flights? Do they see an opportunity to capitalise and inflate fares? Where's the body that stops that happening? You know, how are we addressing that? How are we curtailing that, you know, the bullying of fares and so on? So I think that was something that would need to be addressed, but I absolutely agree, total worldwide connectivity. But again, just to say, I'm zoomed in, and you know, with those increasing sales, the ease of access to buy goods, products and services through other mediums, e-tail v retail and bricks v clicks, we're forever needing to make it easy for the shopper, actually, and that includes all modes of transport, including car park infrastructure and parking and rail. You know, we're in Sunderland. It's not easy to get from Newcastle Airport to Sunderland. But God forbid, if we cut the flights to Newcastle Airport, you know, then you can see that there's even less activity from a business perspective will be steered towards Sunderland. So I see the whole structure is vitally important as well.
Okay, well, let's now move on to the skills agenda. And I'd like to start by asking Beth, really, who should be responsible for driving forward the skills agenda?
Thanks. I think, you know, skills shortages are really it's one of the biggest threats to the UK, and you know there is going to be in the North East real demand for high skilled workers. In fact, there already is. So you know the aspiration to have a high skilled workforce in the North East is the one that we welcome, especially with sort of transferable skills in order to be able to respond to change in economic demands. I think the recommendations show that they want to develop a skills Northeast, which will be set up to work between the combined authority and the LEP. I think this sort of group or body needs to be coordinated. It needs to obviously have the resources for it to be able to function and function well. It also needs to be, we've already mentioned, representative of the partners and our aspirations in the region, which is, you know, you've got employers, colleges, universities, the workforce. They all need to be represented. And TUC nationally, you know, continues to make a strong case for looking at the social partnership model, you know, developing strong industrial partnerships, models that we know work well in the likes of Germany. And that's, you know, a model I think, you know, we should be looking at and aspiring to be like. I think the LA7 board calls for kind of the regional skills solutions to be led by employer-led partnerships. And, you know, we do have some sort of reservations around that. And a number of safeguards really would like to see, you know, as part of that employer-led system. And that's things around, you know, again, social inclusion, you know, giving workers a voice on any kind of reformed funding systems. Also ensuring that, you know, employers maintain high standards of quality and equality when we're looking at perhaps new frameworks or devolving funding and using funding at a local level, that it's done equally. Everyone has the opportunity to fulfil and develop their potential within the workforce. And also ensuring that, you know, college and the training provider network isn't destabilised, you know, in the major changes, if we're rerouting funding. So just to be cautious of some of those things. But overall, I guess, you know, supportive in terms of working collaboratively around looking at the skills issues in the region.
Thank you. Lucy, from the sort of provider's point of view, what's your perspective?
Well, I agree with Beth. It's a collaboration. And to answer the question you put, John, whose responsibility is it? It's actually it's a large number of us. It starts with schools, it continues into colleges, it goes on to universities, but primarily all of those people need to be working with and listening to the needs of business, so that it is a package. We provide, obviously, the basis of the supply of universities is undergraduate degrees, but it's not just about that. We get involved with training of young people, mature people, workforce, at all sorts of different levels, and actually we're much more active in the skills thing than people imagine. It isn't just about the provision of degrees and postgraduate degrees. So there's a whole package that we need to be involved with, and I think it is part of that dialogue with business. The universities, and I think that the universities in the Northeast don't get the credit. I would say this, wouldn't I? But they don't get the credit they deserve for being responsive to business needs. I think we're pretty good at listening and reacting, and I think there's some really strong examples around. I talk to a lot of engineering businesses, and a number of them say, you don't provide physics anymore, you universities. That's what we really need to get the class of graduates we want. Well, we've listened, and we're providing physics. We're not the only university to be very responsive and quicker than people give us credit to that. So it's a whole package around the skills, and it starts at actually quite a young level at schools.
Yes, we don't really have anybody here who can speak for the schools, I suspect, and yet Andrew gave quite a little chunk of his introduction to the schools. I mean, I don't know whether anybody on the panel has anything to say on that.
Yeah,
Roy?
I do. I'm the governor at the school, by the way. But beyond that, innovation demands, obviously, if you're going to have an innovation program to deliver great solutions, then you need great skills. And frankly, there better be better skills than those available elsewhere, either in the country or in the world. That's a given. There are some fantastic best practice examples around the world of businesses engaging with local authorities, engaging with schools, universities, colleges, simply engaging in concepts which are essentially cradle-to-career concepts, skill-based cradle-to-career concepts. There are at least half a dozen fantastic examples in North America, both in the United States and in Canada, which we would be sensible simply to take a look at as great examples. They may not be wholly appropriate to the kind of environment we have here in the Northeast, but they might be. And I'm not one for reinventing the wheel if there's already one, and that's the thought. But this cradle-to-career concept, we've just got to get to grips with it. I don't think schools talk enough to colleges of further education. I don't think they talk enough to universities. I think there's serendipitous engagement with business, which could be systematized. We are in a great place in the Northeast to do that. We're small enough to be able to do it across the board with the numbers of universities and colleges of further education and schools that we've got. We've even got schools coming together. North Tyneside has a learning trust with 34 schools in it. Why not pilot a cradle-to-career engagement process there? So anyway, I'm quite passionate about this.
Okay. And Andy,
there's just a thought.
You're a big consumer of skills as an industry, aren't you?
Yeah, and we don't need to go as far as the States, to find some great examples. In Sunderland, working with the local authority, and it was a local authority and business initiative just this year in summer. We delivered a week called Work Discovery Week, and we took 1,000 students and we exposed them to 60 businesses over a week at the Stadium of Light, the Bridges, and other sort of large establishments. And it was the first time we tried this, and it was an absolute huge success. As a byproduct of that, not only did the school leavers, 15, 16-year-olds, get a better understanding of the roles and the abilities required and the skills required for the jobs available, but we actually had employers talking to 15-year-olds and were overwhelmed by the understanding that these young potential school leavers had. We're going to build on this next year. This is absolutely huge for Sunderland, and we're pleased we've sort of launched this concept. So it's in the doing again. We're getting on with this. We're not going to wait till we find out what the global answer is for it, and we'll keep chipping away and we'll add to it and we'll improve it each year. But I think it's quite an inline example of what Roy's alluding to. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one other, it's one of the lesser themes of the report, but one which I'm personally interested in, so I'm going to ask it. It's about the cultural offering that the region has, and how important is that in supporting a diverse economy? I mean, this is a question from Jonathan Blackie of North East Cultural Partnership. How important do you feel as part of the offering the cultural sector is? So, Lucy, why don't you start?
You can see I'm dying to chip in, declaring my interest as a board member of Live Theatre on the quayside in Newcastle, and declaring my proud award of Journal Best Culture and Partnership Award this year. Culture is absolutely essential to this region. If you look at various economic plans around and about the country and close your eyes, not quite sure what they're talking about, which area, you have to think, what are the differentiators? And I think in the North East we are outstanding in the cultural and creative sector. And I think it is a little bit underplayed in the discussion about the importance of the creative, cultural, and I add in digital to that as well. Not only an economy of its own and its ability to create its own jobs and create exciting businesses, and Roy made a reference to one earlier, but also the part of the inward investment piece as well. If you want the very best people to come and work in our businesses, and for us, our universities, and we want the very best staff and the very best students, what the city offers is really, really important. So if you have a creative city, you have a creative economy, and we're really blessed up here because we've got several creative cities. You can tell I'm on my hobby horse. I'm so excited actually about the offering that universities can make to the cultural sector. We've got great examples. Going to mention Live Theatre is going to do a massive development down on the quayside, multi-million-pound development with some European funding, with the support of Newcastle City Council and prudential borrowing. And it is not just about a cultural offering, but it is about changing the landscape of the city and creating jobs in the cultural sector. So I think it's really, really important. And the partnerships that I lead in the cultural sector, again, are not just about the wonderful creation of art, drama, theatre, music, whatever it is. But these partnerships are about establishing jobs in the North East in this really strong sector. And I think it's a little bit underplayed. And I think it is really vital in that inward investment piece. And we talked earlier today about inward investment is not just about other countries coming in here, but it's about businesses in this country coming up here, and the things that we can offer here are special. And one final word, let's not miss out sport and the importance of our talents and attractions there as well.
Excellent. On that innovation thing, Roy, is that something that interests you?
Oh yeah, sure. The creative industries always suffer because they, in a sense, because they're a bit amorphous in my eyes. You know, they're not quite like the chemistry-based industries or the biopharma industries or the biotech bit. However, they're critically important in two ways. One of them is the straightforward cultural advantage of that we can share with people who might bring their money and their business and their jobs to us. But separately, this area has a fantastic design-based set of companies. You've only got to look at the organisation that operates as a network here, Design Network North, and the people who are involved in that to see just how creative and innovative those organisations are. They can range from really tiny SMEs just establishing themselves and getting support from bigger players, right through to major companies. And I do not underestimate, indeed, as an innovation hub, the design sector. It may not, and it may actually gain from creating a really vibrant and dynamic open innovation hub at the Northern Design Centre. It will, in fact. But it's not just that. It's a grouping of great companies. So it's certainly at the forefront of my mind and worthy of significant investment, just as innovation hubs in major technologically based sectors are. Thanks. Thank you.
It struck. I covered sort of urban regeneration on two of my jobs at the Financial Times, and it did strike me, particularly going around in the late noughties, seeing cities that I'd seen back in the early 90s, that there was a bit of a kit had emerged for how you regenerate an old Victorian city. And this struck me particularly in Liverpool, which is, first of all, you have to clear the waterfront. So you have to have water, then you have apartments overlooking it. Then you need a big conference centre, probably. You need an arena where big sports events can be staged. You need some good hotels. And so you could just see it all unfolding city by city as people sort of spotted this. And actually, I said I wasn't from the northeast, I'm from Belfast, but whenever I go back there, it's just following the same pattern, but about, for obvious reasons, 15 years after all the other great Victorian cities. And it makes them sort of buzzy and it attracts people. Anyway.
John, can I say one other thing?
That's right.
I apologise. The community. The great thing about the creative industries is that they are easier to understand. People in laboratories are often one step removed from the community at large, but creative stuff and design and small company manufacturing is much easier to understand. And there are some initiatives around the place that we might want to learn from, particularly things like Fab Lab, which exists in Manchester, particularly in Manchester, which is a place where individuals and hobbyists can go and be innovative. And it brings innovation into the community because it shouldn't be separate from the community. It should be part of it. And the creative industries allow that kind of thing to happen. And we might want to think about that, by the way, in the Northern Design Centre. So think of Fab Lab, and it's so important for the community engagement with innovation. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. As I said, it's part of my obsession. Another question was about how can the partners go about exploiting the opportunities for collaboration with neighbouring regions. One of the things about the RDA going is that there is now a division in what was the old RDA area, and then also there's a great deal of talk in the Adonis report about collaborating with other, even in parts of Scotland, but what's really being achieved here? I mean, who'd like to lead off on that one? Dave, why don't you go?
Well, quite interesting. This one's with me NECC hat on. I spent yesterday afternoon on Teesside attending their committee meeting. And funny enough, John, I left with one specific word. Having spent an hour and a half with them, the word I left with was collaboration. Okay? There's no doubt about that. And I think we should be working where we can with our neighbours. And certainly when you look at the two areas, and I talk them openly about that I think it's right to have two LEPs because of the vast area that we cover. It's important. And I think both LEPs have done good work. And we talked about that yesterday. But I think the collaboration needs to be strong with them. I think we have to embrace them, because if we don't, who's to say they mightn't start leaning towards Leeds in Yorkshire? So I think it's very important that we collaborate with them. In terms of Scotland, we should definitely see where we are going. I have some concerns about what powers they may get in terms of the taxation and what that would then mean for it. I get back onto me airport hobby horse now to say that if APD got devolved and they could vary APD in Scotland, then it would hurt this region significantly. So, but until that's a fact, then we should explore every opportunity of working closely with our neighbours, without a shadow of a doubt.
Does that involve perhaps that this LEP might have to accept it's conceding some things to Teesside?
I don't think it's about conceding anything. I think it's about picking up the theme that we've already discussed. I think there's things such as the transport infrastructure. We heard Andy said earlier that he finds it difficult to get around the region to Newcastle Airport. Now, if he finds it difficult from Sunderland, then our colleagues in Teesside might find it a little bit even more difficult. So I think it's about finding the key things, and not just transport. What's come across to me sitting here is the skills issue. Well, it's not conceding anything there. I think there's a great opportunity that you can bring our colleagues on Teesside into the one region element on those kind of issues. So I see transport and skills definitely is an opportunity for it to work very, very closely together. You know, we've touched on universities. There's another great university on Teesside. So, you know, the opportunities are there. And, you know, coming back to what was said to earlier by Mick, Andrew and Paul, the opportunities is there. It's up to us to grab them. And certainly working with our neighbours, it's no issue at all.
If I may just follow up on that university point, I find it impossible to talk about the strength in the North East and the strength of the universities in the North East without saying the strength of the 5 universities in the North East. It's just second nature to me to include Teesside. And the universities aren't working in these boundaries. We collaborate with each other. We collaborate north of the border, within the region, nationally and internationally with businesses and so on. But the Teesside thing to me is actually quite important, and the strengths of the business at that side of the region, our graduates are working there. It's part of the bigger picture of the North East. So I think it's really important that there is, again, some sort of thought and leadership around that. What does that bit of the region mean to us, and how this collaborative piece pulls together?
I think, John, just to come back on one final thing, since taking over as President 3 months ago, I'm extremely encouraged by the reception that I've had on Tees Valley, and also the fact about them wanting to work with us in terms of the NECC. I'm looking forward to meeting Stephen Catchpole, which is in my diary, and seeing Sandy Anderson. And I think all of these things, right, indicate to me that there's a will within the region to collaborate and work together, and it's just about keeping the momentum that's been created going and enhancing it as quickly as we can.
Thank you for that. Now, last question of this session I'm going to ask Beth, actually, which is the issue of the increasing gap regionally between the rich and the poor, which was, again, a theme identified in the Adonis report. And what should we be doing about that? How can we ensure that it doesn't widen further?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think we all agree collectively in this room today that we want to see more people doing well across the whole of the North East, and perhaps we don't have the share of the kind of national wealth up here in the North East. But what we do see is big issues around poverty, big issues around inclusion across the whole of the region. We need to very much aspire to have a higher standard of income and a better quality of life for people across the North East. And if I may just take this opportunity to say that we are seeing in the region a real change in the labour market as a result in the impact on the cuts. So, for example, what I want to say is we're seeing really large numbers, over 55,000 jobs being lost across the whole of the North East in sectors where there's union recognition, if you like. So we're seeing large volumes of people who've gone from good quality employment with good terms and conditions to kind of low-paid part-time work in sectors where perhaps the labour market isn't organised by a union. And what we're also seeing is a large volume of zero-hour contracts across the whole of the region. Whether you agree with them or not, it's happening. And I think the majority of people on those wouldn't choose to be on them. They'd rather know how much they're getting, when they're getting, so they can plan. I know from intelligence in the region that we've got, speaking to the public, some people across the region are juggling, 2, 3, 4 and 5 zero-hour contracts on a weekly basis in order just to sort of make ends meet. There's a lot of in-work poverty across the region. In terms of the real wage cuts, the big story I think the TUC is running with before Congress next week is the real wage loss. And the North East, no surprise, has been hit the hardest. Some analysis show that in Darlington, people who work full-time are on average up to around £80 worse off a week. In Cumbria, it's about £50 a week, and it's just similar story for the rest of the North East. So what we want to see, and I think we welcome the Adonis review and the recommendations around the jobs and growth, because that's exactly what we need, and what we want is we want to see more skilled jobs that mean essentially mean that people don't have to rely on the welfare state because of poor wages. But we also, a starting point for us could be that, you know, more employers who can afford it to pay the living wage for their lowest paid workers who are essentially on the living wage, and that constitutes for 375 workers across the North East, 32% of the North East workforce. So, and another interesting fact is that, you know, outside central London, the North East has the highest levels of child poverty, and in most cases one of those parents is actually in work. I think nationally it's around 55% of children in poverty have at least one parent in work. So by raising the pay for the poorest across the North East is going to help spending on the high streets. It's also going to help raise the living standards. And obviously I'm going to say this, I think we need more opportunities for trade unions to collectively bargain for better rights, terms and conditions, standards, pay, health and well-being, and supporting workers with skills, you know, in the workplace. And one of the questions I got was, you know, who should lead on this? Who should be responsible for this? And I think my answer to that is all of us. We all need to be responsible. We all have jobs and roles where we can influence change and support the poorest in society, and we need to use our roles in order to help support that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm about to wind up, but I just wanted to say, there's only a few minutes left, so no big speeches, please, but does anybody on the panel want to say anything they haven't had a chance to say on this session?
Well, I've got another hour to go at least.
No? Okay. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank on behalf of all of you, the panel, who've given us a very wide range of answers to a very wide range of questions. And to let you know that all the questions submitted will be responded to and published on the NELEP website, which will be announced on Twitter, but also via the NELEP email bulletin. So there we are. And could I also ask you now to thank the panel for all their answers.